The first time it happened, it was broad daylight, the kind of afternoon where the sun exposes everything you try to hide inside yourself. I was standing outside a community clinic with a paper bag of groceries in my hand, thinking I was just doing a small, forgettable good deed, when a single question would later change the shape of my entire life. At that moment, though, I didn't know it. I only knew that some acts of kindness arrive quietly, and others arrive like a tremor that rearranges the ground beneath your feet. Before we go any further, if you believe that kindness deserves second chances and that ordinary people can change each other's lives, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel Kindness Tales. Your support keeps stories like this alive. My name is Armin Halim, and for most of my life, I've been the kind of man people describe as steady but invisible. I worked as a building inspector for the city, spent my mornings walking through half-finished structures under the bright sun, and my evenings eating quiet meals alone in a small apartment. At 39, I had learned how to keep expectations low. Love had passed me by after a long relationship ended years ago, and I told myself I was fine with routine, with helping when I could, and with not expecting anything back. That belief made it easier to breathe, or so I thought. That afternoon, the clinic doors opened, and a woman stepped out, struggling to balance herself as she adjusted the strap of a worn shoulder bag. She wasn't elderly, but exhaustion clung to her like a shadow. Her name, I would later learn, was Samira Kwan. She was 49, a decade older than me, with hair streaked by early silver and eyes that looked like they had spent too long watching life from the sidelines. I noticed her because she dropped her bus card, and instinct pushed me forward before hesitation could stop me. Helping her was simple. I handed her the card, offered to carry the grocery bag she clearly couldn't manage, and walked with her toward the bus stop under the bright, unrelenting sky. We talked about nothing important at first, about the heat, about how the city never seemed to slow down even at noon. She mentioned she had come from a cleaning shift at a hotel before visiting the clinic, and I didn't ask why she was there. Some questions don't need answers right away. Over the next few weeks, daylight kept pulling our paths together. I saw her again outside the same clinic, then at the corner market, then once at a park bench where the sun filtered through thin trees. Each time, I helped in small ways, carrying bags, waiting with her for a bus, sharing bottled water. I told myself I was just being decent, nothing more. But kindness has a way of creating space where walls used to be, and soon that space started to fill with something warmer than intention. Samira's life unfolded slowly in fragments. She had raised 2 children on her own after a husband walked away years earlier, leaving behind debts and silence. One child had moved abroad, chasing opportunity, while the other struggled with illness that required frequent clinic visits. Samira worked long hours during the day, slept too little, and carried the weight of responsibility with the calm determination of someone who had no choice but to keep going. Watching her in the bright clarity of day, I felt my own complaints shrink into insignificance. What unsettled me wasn't just her story. It was the way she looked at me, not with expectation, but with something like relief, as if the presence of another human being walking beside her under the sun made the load lighter. I started rearranging my lunch breaks so I might run into her. I told myself it was coincidence, but deep down, I knew better. Still, I kept my emotions locked away. She was older. She had a complicated life. I was just helping her out. That was the rule I repeated to myself. Then came the day everything shifted. It was late morning, sunlight bouncing off concrete buildings, when we sat on a bench outside the clinic, the city moving around us like a river. Samira looked unusually quiet, her gaze fixed on people passing by. Something in her posture told me this wasn't just another ordinary day. When she finally turned toward me, there was a seriousness in her expression that made my chest tighten before she even spoke. She asked a question that landed heavier than I expected, a question about whether a man could ever see past age, past numbers, and consider building a life with a woman 10 years older than himself. There was no flirtation in it, no assumption, only vulnerability laid bare in the open daylight. In that moment, all my carefully stacked excuses collapsed. I felt exposed, forced to confront truths I had been avoiding. The days that followed were restless. I walked through construction sites under the sun, my mind replaying that question again and again. I thought about what people would say, about judgment disguised as concern, about the neat timeline society prefers for love. I also thought about Samira's strength, her quiet humor, the way she never complained despite carrying so much. I realized that the fear holding me back had little to do with her and everything to do with my own insecurity. Change doesn't announce itself loudly. It creeps in through reflection and daylight honesty. I began to see that helping her hadn't been charity. It had been connection. She hadn't asked for rescue. She had asked for understanding. The age difference, once a wall in my mind, began to feel small compared to the years of resilience she carried with grace. I understood that love isn't about matching chapters in a book. It's about choosing to read forward together. One afternoon, under a sky so bright it felt like a promise, I met Samira again near the park. The city noise softened around us, and for the first time, I allowed myself to stop hiding behind helpful gestures. I didn't have grand words or dramatic gestures, only honesty shaped by weeks of daylight clarity. I realized that what scared me most was not what others might think, but the possibility of losing something meaningful by refusing to try. From that day on, our walks became longer, our conversations deeper, and the sun seemed to witness a quiet transformation. Samira laughed more, a sound that felt earned rather than careless. I found myself looking forward to mornings instead of enduring them. Her children became part of my thoughts, not as obstacles, but as lives already woven into hers. I learned that love built in daylight is sturdy because it doesn't rely on illusion. There were challenges, of course. There were awkward questions from coworkers, raised eyebrows from acquaintances, and moments of doubt that crept in during silent nights. But each challenge was met with openness rather than secrecy. We chose to face the world without hiding, letting the truth of our connection speak louder than assumptions. Slowly, judgment lost its power, replaced by acceptance or indifference, neither of which could shake what we were building. What surprised me most was how much lighter my own life became. In helping her, I had found purpose beyond routine. In choosing her, I had chosen courage. Samira never asked me to save her. She reminded me that strength and vulnerability can coexist, that love doesn't diminish with age but deepens. The sunlight that once revealed my loneliness now illuminated a shared path forward. As this story draws close, I want to ask you something from the heart. If this journey of kindness turning into connection has moved you, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in love beyond limits, and subscribe to Kindness Tales so more stories like this can reach people who need them. And before the final moments fade, here is a special request. Please leave a comment below telling us whether you believe kindness can change destiny. Your words matter more than you know. Today, when I walk beside Samira under the open sky, I no longer think about age or fear or the labels people use to simplify love. I think about that first simple act of helping and how it opened a door I didn't know existed. Some stories begin with grand declarations. Ours began in daylight, with a small kindness, and grew into a life where two people chose each other not despite their differences, but because of the strength those differences revealed.